Thank you, Kate. We are now going to hear from Jane Disibio presenting her talk on the difference between a hero and a villain.
Hero. What does this word bring to mind? Is it a muscular man wearing red tights and a cape, or is it someone like George Washington, who is an everyday hero but has left a long-lasting impact on the people of today? The definition of hero, according to dictionary.com, is a man of distinguished courage or ability, admired for his brave deeds and noble qualities. This definition works most of the time. However, it says man. Does this mean that a woman cannot be a hero? On the other hand, the definition for villain is a cruelly malicious person who is involved in or devoted to wickedness or crime. Note how this definition says person, implying that it can be either man or woman. So to get things straight, a man can be a hero or a villain, and apparently a woman can be a villain. Alright, now we're going to look at some images. Which person in this picture looks more like the superhero, and which one the villain? Now, which person in this picture looks more heroic to you? And lastly, just look at this man's picture. For question 1, most likely you chose the traditional looking superhero as the hero and the more obvious looking villain as the villain. This is because the superhero's clothing uses brighter colors, including blue, red, and yellow, which make him look happier. In addition to this, his clothing is tighter, which shows off his strength and that he has nothing to hide. Furthermore, his name is Dudley Do Right. Do Right. I guess there's not that much symbolism in his name. Alright, now for the villain. His clothing is much darker. He wears the colors black, dark gray, and dull green, which makes him look gloomier. And his clothing is also looser and baggier, which symbolically shows that he may be carrying something or concealing secrets. Now for the second image. In this picture, a man is arresting a woman. The cop is doing his job and placing a woman in jail for breaking several city laws. But what I do not tell you is who the woman was and why she's being arrested. Her name was Rosa Parks, and she was being arrested because she did not give up her seat on a bus to a white person, simply just because they were white. So who's the real hero here? The policeman doing his job, denying civil rights? Or Rosa Parks, standing up for herself, standing up for others, and doing what she truly believes in? Now for the third image. Some people in the audience may not know who this man is, so to briefly summarize, his name is Nat Turner. He was a murderer. He could possibly be considered a serial killer. 57 people were killed by him. Those lives could have been saved if he did not do what he did. So this is obvious, right? He's a killer, he's bad, we do not like him, but it's really not all that black and white. Yes, he did kill 57 people, but it was in hope to save 4 million from the harsh life of slavery. He was rebelling against slavery by killing people in the southern United States who owned slaves. Is he really a hero? Attempting to save 4 million lives is definitely a heroic action, but does killing almost 60 cancel that out? I think he's a person who has a plan to do good, but he would only succeed if a bad action was done. I do not think he can be classified as good or bad. This leads to the question of, what's the difference between a hero and a villain anyways? Well, it is a blurred and shaded line. Some people may be kind of confused, because in television and movies, the hero's the good guy and the villain's the bad guy. How hard could it be to tell the difference? Actually, very difficult. This is because something called the perspective variable comes into play. This means that the key to understanding the situation is knowing which point of view it is told from. For example, take a character like Gru from the popular movie Despicable Me. He is in fact a villain because he fits the stereotype by wearing dark clothing. But many people do not see him this way. This is because he's the protagonist in the story. We want him to succeed. His desires are our desires. And because we like him, we search and keep a memory of all of the positive actions he does. But once a villain has been identified, we look for the negative qualities in them to assure ourselves that we have the right view of him. But if we like a character or person, we do the opposite. We search for the positive qualities in them. Basically, we just try to back up our first impression of someone with thoughts or knowledge we may have about them. Yet to make things even more complex, The villain and the hero can both be either the protagonist or the antagonist in the story. This may seem confusing, but it is actually quite simple. This is because either the hero or the villain is attempting to carry out some sort of plan or idea, meanwhile the other individual is trying to stop him. Another thing is, what's the difference between a superhero and a hero? Well, we know that a superhero is a hero with superhuman qualities or powers. But couldn't it be a hero shown over-the-top heroic qualities, implying that their heroism is superior to others? Well, a man under this definition is named Captain Sully. He was flying a large plane when suddenly a flock of geese interfered with his engine. Then he took the heroic step to land the plane in a river. By doing this, he saved the lives of everybody on board. He is a true superhero, and this makes all soldiers, firemen, policemen, etc. superheroes of this type. And I personally believe that they should be valued way more than a narcissistic killing man, even if he does good in the end. But once again, the line is blurred. It is hard to tell the difference between a hero and a villain. And sometimes people even change statuses. Occasionally, the people change or try to change. But most often, when it happens, it is society's opinion that does. For example, George Washington. He always had the same beliefs about America and government. But at first, he was in fact seen as a terrorist. Yes, George Washington was a terrorist because he was committing treason in the eyes of the British government. But it was not he who changed. It was everyone else who did. Now most Americans love America and believe that George Washington was a really good man. But my assumption is that if the Patriots had lost the Revolutionary War, we may not think of him this way. We might still think of him as a terrorist. Isn't this kind of similar to Nat Turner's story, just with the opposite and more fortunate outcome? We are taught in a way that makes everything seem so black and white. In school and at home, we learn things from just one perspective. Where parents and teachers tell us what is right, wrong, good, and bad, which doesn't really give kids enough opportunities to develop their own opinions. An example as mentioned earlier is the Revolutionary War. Here in America, we learned that the Patriots were people who fought hard for independence from Britain because they treated the colony like a baby and took advantage of them by taxing them without giving them representation. But this is not the case in Britain. There, they learned that the British simply lost. They gave up on the war. They stopped fighting because they did not think that the colonies were valuable enough to fight for. These are two very different stories told from the same event. All in all, perspective changes everything. It is quite common that if you hear the same story told from two different people, the responses will be very varied. This is because people are raised under different circumstances and rules. Minds are like a snowflake or a fingerprint, because although two may be similar, none are exactly the same. You may have found somebody with a mindset you think is exact to yours, but in truth, you haven't. You just have not found what you disagree on and what makes you different. Overall, a hero to one person may be a villain to another due to perspective. Thank you.